Let's get ready to mortgage. He is the prince of programs, guru of guidelines, master of matrices. He puts the fun in funding. Please welcome Mark, Mr. Mortgage Eitel.
All right. My name is Mark Eitel, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show. And friends, you are in the right place. Sit down, buckle up. It's going to be a fun one today. We've got an awesome show lined up for you. But you're in the right place if you've got questions and you want answers. Not the headlines, but the data, the tips, the tricks, the strategies, and all the information that you need so you can go out there and make better real estate and mortgage decisions for you and your family. Guys, we do this each week right here. Same bat time, same bat station. I am joined as always by Jen, my lovely producer, who is standing by womanning the Anytime Hotline, and you can get your questions or comments on the air throughout the show by calling or texting 855-462-7292. That's 855-462-7292. That is the Anytime Hotline, and she'll get you on the air. If you are shy and you want to send us an email, just go to mrmortgageradio.com. That's mrmortgageradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page, click on that email icon, and you can shoot your questions over that way. She will read them on the air for you. But guys, as I mentioned, we have an awesome show lined up for you this week. I've been diving through the data. I've been reading the headlines, screaming at my computer sometimes and laughing other times. There's been some interesting data released this week all around housing and interest rates, and we're going to touch on that. The Atlanta Fed president had some interesting words on CNBC, and in a nutshell, he said they anticipate an additional quarter-point rate hike at the next meeting, and then they imagine a holding pattern for quite some time, I believe were his exact words. I posted that to the Facebook group. If you want to check that out, go to mrmortgageradio.com and click on that Facebook link. Watch his interview yourself. It was quite interesting, but basically a lot of people have been beating the drum that interest rates are going to be sliding downward by the end of the year. And you've heard me say for months that I don't think that's the case, and he kind of reinforced it. In his words, they imagine holding for quite some time through 2024 and beyond. So anyway, I shared that to the Facebook page. Watch that for yourself. Let me know what you think. Drop some comments there afterwards and let me know your thoughts on that. But it kind of reinforces what we've been saying for quite some time. But that got me thinking, how many people are frozen, just turtled up, waiting for interest rates to help them make the decision? Guys, I think we've seen that housing prices, by and large, are surviving the higher interest rates. And for many, many reasons, guys, we talk about it all the time. Supply and demand. A lot of people don't want to sell right now because they have a small mortgage payment, a low interest rate, and a lot of equity. So there's just not a lot of houses coming to the market that are going to push prices down significantly. And we've experienced these rate increases now for well over a year, and the market is absorbing them because of that supply and demand equation. But back to my point, a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines watching the wrong data set to make their decision. And we talked about it last week. We referenced that movie Moneyball, which fascinates me because they built a baseball team looking at real fundamental data that no one else was paying attention to. And in my twisted brain, everything comes back to real estate and mortgages. And I just kind of related the Moneyball experience to the mortgage and real estate world. And if you missed last week's show, check it out at mrmortgageradio.com. We got a lot of positive comments about that whole Moneyball scenario. But anyway, so a lot of people are sitting this market out thinking that the rates are going to go back down. And I want to share a story, and this isn't my story. Guys, I've referenced Brian Stevens in the National Real Estate Post on the show a few times, and I really admire Brian. He's equal parts cynic and soothsayer. He's really entertaining. He always delivers a good show on YouTube. But anyway, Brian was sharing a story where he recently spent $3,000 to build a chicken coop because he was frustrated by egg prices. And that got me thinking, wow, how many people are sitting in a rental unit right now paying a high rent rate because they're frustrated by interest rates? And to use Brian's analogy, right, a $3,000 chicken coop got me thinking, wait, that's a lot of eggs, right? It's got to be a lot of eggs. So I went to the St. Louis Fed website, and guys, that's where all of the consumer pricing data, housing values, there's a lot of great data there. If you don't visit that site, check it out. Just Google St. Louis Fed or FRED, FRED, which is Federal Reserve Economic Data, FRED, St. Louis Fed, and it'll pop up. There's a lot of stuff on that website. But egg prices spiked in January with an average nationwide price of $4.80. Now, he's out in California, so let's round that up to $6. And it might be more if you go to some of the fancy grocery stores, but for this story, I'm going to use $6. So a $3,000 chicken coop with a $6 price tag on a dozen eggs. Guys, that's 500 dozen eggs. That's the break even on just the coop. That's no chicken feed, no chickens, just the coop. 500 dozen eggs. Well, guys, if you eat a dozen eggs a week, and that may be a lot for some or a little for others, 500 dozen eggs will last you 9.61 years at a dozen eggs per week. So are you doing that to yourself by waiting the market out because the interest rates frustrate you? Did you just spend 9.61 years worth of egg purchases to build the coop? Now you've got to go out there and buy the eggs. You got to buy the chickens, not to mention, man, who wants to clean a chicken coop and get up every morning and have to grab? Maybe that's your thing. I don't know. I'm a hillbilly, but I'm not a fan of raising chickens. We did that when we were kids. Yeah, and man, oh man, they're a mess. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting because sometimes we make our decisions based on frustration and emotion and not necessarily logic. And guys, I say it all the time, logic and emotion can't run the same brain at the same time. And I really look at a lot of people's decision making and see they're basing it on frustration. And housing, back to housing for a minute, you're paying rent unless you're in your mom's basement. And if you're in your mom's basement, guys, treat that lady like a queen. Wash the dishes, mow the lawn, because you do not want her to push you out of the nest and have to go out there and rent or buy in this environment. But most people, by and large, are paying rent. And guys, if you could buy something for the equivalent of that rent payment, you should be building equity. And we've talked about it decade over decade since 1940 to 2020, because that was the data set available. Housing values have never gone down in 10-year jumps. So, you know, a lot of people I talk to say, I can't afford what I want, so I'm going to wait until I can afford what I want. Well, guys, you can't outsave appreciation, and we've seen that happen in the recent past, right? Housing values have appreciated faster than people could save up a little more money for a bigger down payment. So I think that's not the wisest decision making. I think we're just convincing ourselves. I'll go to the gym in February because in January it's busy. It's that kind of logic, and we just keep kicking that can down the road. So I really believe that getting that first house under your belt, whether you have to sacrifice that fourth bedroom, or maybe this one doesn't have a pool, or it's a townhouse instead of a regular single family house, you have to make those sacrifices in the beginning to start building equity, because that equity makes everything much easier on the other side. So speaking of the other side, guys, you hear the music? You know what that means? That's my cue. We'll be back in a few. On the other side of this break, we're going to dive into the data and start taking your questions. Sit tight. We'll be right back. Let me tell you a little story about a man named Jed. Well, this is not a story about Jed, but it is a story about Mary. Mary is an awesome single mom who's been raising her daughter in a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment for the last 11 years. That's right, 1 bedroom and 1 bath. Hey, they've made the best of it. They've got bunk beds in there and it's worked. But her daughter's now a teenager and it's becoming a challenge, especially sharing that bathroom. She decided to jump in and become a homeowner. We got her approved with an FHA loan. That's right, I said it, FHA. Hey, if your agent's telling you FHA and VA loans are not getting accepted, you are working with the wrong agent. Contact me and I'll get you in touch with a really great agent. Hey, but back to Mary. She jumped in and she is now a proud homeowner. They have their own bedrooms, but more importantly, their own baths. They couldn't be happier. Guys, if you'd like to learn more, check out MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. My name is Mark Eitel, NMLS 1929005. Check us out at MrMortgageRadio.com.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is Mark Eitel. You are locked and loaded right here on the Mr. Mortgage Show. Thank you for spending some of your day with us. Guys, if you've got questions or comments or just, hey, let's do a sing-along. Give me a shout. Shoot us a text, 855-462-7292. That's 855-462-7292. That is the Anytime Hotline, and that's how you get your questions on the air. Jen, my producer, is standing by, womanning that hotline, and she will take care of your questions. 855-462-7292. If you prefer to shoot us an email, just visit MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com, and scroll to the bottom of the page, click on that email icon, and she'll get your questions that way too. So, hey, we opened up the show talking about building the chicken coop to save on eggs, and we equated that to renting while you're waiting out these higher interest rates. And guys, the wait might be longer than you think. What's that old song? Waiting is the hardest part. Sometimes getting moving is the hardest part, whether it's diets, exercise, or just turning the news off and making the very best decisions you can for yourself with the data that's in front of you. Guys, that's what we're all about. We're going to do our very best to answer all your questions and give you the info that you need so you can make better decisions for you and your family in the world of real estate and mortgages. But hey, Jen, I see you back there busily at work with the board and the phones. Are we already getting in some questions?
We've got questions and they want answers, Mark.
All right. I like the sound of that. It sounds like we're going to have a good show, that we are locked and loaded back there. So let's get started. If you've got a question ready, go ahead and throw it my way. Let's see what we've got.
Kim sent this one. I'm considering buying a small office building and the seller is offering to hold the mortgage. This may be a dumb question, but will I own the property? Like if I had used a bank? I hope that makes sense.
Hey, Kim, that's actually a great question. That's not a dumb question, because we're seeing a lot of owner financing. When I say a lot, don't get me wrong, it's not, an overwhelming percentage of purchase transactions suddenly are owner financing, but because of the equity position that a lot of people have and where interest rates have gone to, some sellers are considering it, whether in this case like a commercial property or even with homes. They're selling the property and holding the mortgage and benefiting from the income stream that a higher interest rate generates. So not a dumb question, because it feels a lot like a lease option, right? You're buying this building, in this case, from an individual who you're giving a down payment to, and now you're writing a check each month to that very same individual. So, I get how it could feel like a lease option, but if it's a true seller-held mortgage, you'll go through a closing just like you would if ABC Bank was your lender, and you'll bring your down payment and your closing costs to the title company or the closing attorney. The transaction will close. The deed will record in your name with the seller as a lien holder. That's typically how it works with a true seller-held mortgage. Now, we referenced lease options and rent-to-own, and that's a whole different animal, but the mechanism is very similar, or it feels similar, right? You give a down payment, you sign a lease. Each month you make a payment. In some instances, a percentage of that payment will go towards a future down payment when you actually execute the purchase option. But in a true seller financing scenario, you own the property, they have a lien position. Actually, that was a brilliant question. And guys, if you're curious about how that works for you, feel free to reach out. As I mentioned, a lot of people are starting to consider it as an option because, I was talking to a gentleman recently who is considering selling a property that's worth about $1.5 million. And his fear is once he realizes that gain, he's taxed on a portion of that gain. He's got to do something with that money now to generate income, where he currently generates about $150,000 a year in rental income from this property. So his struggle is, where do I get that same rate of return? And we talked through some owner financing strategies where he could take a nice down payment, hold a mortgage for, 3, 5, 7, 10-year balloon, whatever you're comfortable with, and generate cash flow, get some money up front, and still have that cash flow, because cash flow you spend every month, realized gains is a one-time event and it's often taxed. So it's interesting. And, when you're selling property, yes, there are 1031 exchange options to move that into another property and push that tax event down the road to a future sale unless you do another 1031. I get that. There are strategies around it, but it's becoming more and more of a conversation. So I'm happy to walk anybody through it. So anyway, I appreciate that question. Not a dumb question at all. That was a good one. And a sign of the times, right? Because a lot of people are not really trusting the other investment vehicles out there, right? The stock market's up, it's down. We see what happens with banking. We've referenced it on more than one occasion, all that money that was lost in the Credit Suisse takeover. What was it? $17 billion worth of bondholder money. And you consider bonds a pretty safe investment in most instances. So holding paper as a seller is definitely an option to generate some cash flow. So interesting question. Let me throw it over to Jen and see if we can get another one in.
Ashton sent us this. What does force-placed insurance mean? My insurance is being canceled, and I'm having a hard time getting a reasonable quote. The bank says they can do force-place insurance.
Uh-oh. I bet they did say that. So it is exactly as it sounds. They're forcing a policy on you. So you want to do everything in your power to find a competitive quote before you get that force-placed insurance, because oftentimes the insurance company is a subsidiary of the bank and you're not getting the most competitive rate out there. So forced-place insurance is exactly as it sounds. They are forcing the policy on you because there are requirements for minimum insurance that must be carried. And if you can't meet it, they're going to meet it for you, but they're not doing you a favor by any means. It's going to be an expensive option, almost always more expensive than the most competitive rate that you can find out there. So keep hunting. Guys, if you need a good insurance referral, give me a call. We deal with a lot of insurance companies, and we can give you a name and number. Maybe they can help, Ashton. I hope they can help. But yeah, keep hunting. You don't want to get stuck with forced place insurance, but they're not doing you a favor. They're meeting a requirement, and it's going to cost you. But hey guys, you hear the music, you know what that means. That's my cue. We'll be back in a few. Sit tight on the other side of this break. We'll be back with more of the show and more of your questions. Sit tight. We'll be right back. Have you recently gotten a mortgage approval and now you're wondering, how do you know if it's a good deal? I mean, the wrong decision can cost tens of thousands of dollars in fees and interest rate. Is any of this negotiable? Is this a good rate? Guys, it's Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show, and we are happy at no cost or obligation to you to take a look at that fee sheet for you. We'll go line by line through it, and one of three things will happen. One, we may congratulate you on getting an awesome deal, and then you can exhale and move forward knowing you did great. Or two, we may be able to point out some places in that fee sheet that you can go back and renegotiate a better deal with your current lender. Or three, and guys, this one's my favorite, we may be able to offer you even a better deal, saving you in fees or interest rate or both. Guys, there's no obligation. Just go to MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. Click on that fee sheet review icon and we'll do the rest. It's Mark Eitel, NMLS 1929005.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is Mark Eitel. This is the Mr. Mortgage Show, and it is all about your questions. Guys, we're here to answer your questions and help you navigate this crazy real estate and mortgage market that we are in right now today. There are a lot of confusing headlines swirling around out there, and we've started off with some really good questions so far, and I am looking forward to diving into some more of those. Hey, but before we do, if you are out there and you've got a question or comment and you want to get it on the air, call or text 855-462-7292. That's 855-462-7292. That is the Anytime hotline. You can call or text that number, and Jen will get you on the air. She is my producer extraordinaire. If you prefer to shoot us an email, visit mrmortgageradio.com. That's mrmortgageradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page, click that email icon, and you can shoot your questions in that way. And guys, if you are ever missing the Mr. Mortgage Show during the week when we're not on the air, check out mrmortgageradio.com. There is a podcast link. All of the recorded versions of the previous shows go up there as a podcast. There's links to a lot of the data that we reference, Facebook pages, YouTube channels. There's a lot of stuff up there, but it's all at mrmortgageradio.com. But hey, enough of the PSA. Let me throw it over to Jen for another question. Are you ready? Okay, what do we have?
Lex wants to know, how long will a late mortgage payment stay on my credit? I missed one payment at the beginning of COVID. I need to sell and relocate, and am worried about my credit preventing me from buying.
Hey, Lex, that's a brilliant question, brother. And usually it's you want to be clean for at least 12 months. No late payments, no missed payments. Now, you said you missed one payment at the beginning of COVID. So obviously more than 12 months ago, because, man, can you believe COVID-19, right? This is now 2023. Man, that's the guest that never left, right? But anyway, clearly beyond the 12-month requirement. So you're good there. But one thing I want to caution you, and I've seen this happen to people before, is you'll miss January's payment, for example, and then you'll make a payment in February. Now, you think that you've caught that late payment up, but really that payment gets applied to January. So February's now late. It's called a rolling 30. So unless there was a time where you made both payments, two payments to catch up that late payment, right? If that's the case, you should be fine. But if you just missed a payment and then you started paying again, if you didn't work that out with the lender that payment got pushed to the end, or you went through some restructuring or some moratorium, there may be a chance that that's a rolling 30, right? Which means last month's payment was late. So do yourself a favor and jump on Credit Karma or another credit monitoring service. Credit Karma is free. There's a lot of them out there, guys. But it's amazing now the access to data that we have as consumers at no cost. But Credit Karma, while it's not always the most accurate score, you'll see if that is a rolling 30 or indeed a one-time event. Because assuming it was a one-time event and it was more than 12 months ago, you should be fine. And for anybody else out there who's curious, you want as much distance between you and an adverse credit event as possible when you're applying for a mortgage, but usually 12 months is the minimum requirement. Looking back, 12 months, no late mortgage payments, you should be fine. But brilliant, brilliant question. If you are confused about that rolling 30 scenario and you want me to explain it in detail, give me a call off the air, 855-462-7292. You can shoot me over your Credit Karma report and I can walk you through it if that would help. But brilliant question, my man. You should be okay based on what you shared with me, but I would just caution you to check out that rolling 30 scenario. But yeah, great question. Hey, Jen, do we have another one?
Brianna sent this text. Can I reuse a VA loan? It's been 3 years since I sold and I never missed a payment. I've been renting ever since.
Hey, Brianna, that is a great question, and I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of people are misinformed and assume that you can only use that loan one time, but your entitlement is restored when you sell that property, assuming that everything was in good standing and you didn't go into foreclosure and the loan was satisfied in full, then you can reuse that entitlement. That entitlement is always available to you if you keep your loan in good standing, when you sell it, you can go out there and buy another property with a VA loan. So that's a great question. And we see a lot of people utilize that VA loan the second time. And as I mentioned, many people assume that's a one and done thing. And, they'll put a big down payment down to avoid mortgage insurance and get a conventional loan. But a lot of times, leveraging more of the house and using a VA loan and getting a lower interest rate VA compared to conventional makes more financial sense. And then they take that big piece of equity that they were going to put down on the house and go out and buy a rental property or invest it, or who knows what you do with that additional money. But a lot of people house hack their way up the ladder with the VA loan and cash out nice equity positions. And you could do that. You could take that equity and use the landlord loan that we talk about and go out there and buy a duplex or a fourplex, finance the next house with the VA loan, go all the way to 100%, assuming that it fits your budget requirements, get a low interest rate with the VA loan, and now you're using the equity from your primary home that you just sold to help you build a real estate portfolio. And guys, that's the stuff I'm talking about when I mention look past the data so you can make the very best real estate and mortgage decisions for you and your family. Because a lot of people don't think outside the box, creatively. And I'm not suggesting that I'm a genius. I've just seen enough people do enough really brilliant things, and I can bring those stories to you. So I got a little long-winded, but to answer your question, you indeed can use your VA loan entitlement again, assuming that all of those requirements that I mentioned have been met. So Brianna, I appreciate that question. Thank you for your service. And if you ever need us, we are here and happy to help. Just give us a shout or shoot us an email. Thank you for that. Let me throw it over to Jen, see if we can squeeze in another one.
Dominic sent us this question. Is there any way to avoid mortgage insurance without a big down payment? Someone suggested I ask for a 80-15 loan as a workaround. Is this a good idea? This is actually 2 loans, right? Thanks.
Hey, that's an old school scenario where you take an 80% first mortgage and a 15% second mortgage to get a 95% combined loan to value, CLTV, 80% first, 15% second, and off you go. You put 5% down. Dominic, that'll work. That'll alleviate the mortgage insurance, but you'll want to do that blended rate calculation that we talk about a lot, because the cost of that second mortgage is going to be more than you anticipate in most cases. And sometimes putting down the 5% using FHA, even conventional, but FHA is carrying a better interest rate right now, and then waiting until you build that equity up and do a refinance later to avoid that mortgage insurance with the case of FHA. Or with a conventional loan at an 80% loan to value, you can just ask for the mortgage insurance to be dropped. But oftentimes that monthly payment is less with that strategy than the 80-15. But brilliant question. I appreciate that one. Hey guys, you hear the music? You know what that means. That's my cue. We'll be back in a few. Sit tight on the other side of this break. We'll be back with more of the show. So you think interest rates have gotten too high to refi? Well, not so fast. There are several reasons people refinance. Sure, lowering your interest rate is one, but there's debt consolidation, home improvement, unexpected medical expenses, pulling out some equity to go buy an investment property. Heck, I even know of one guy who refinanced his house so he could buy his mistress a condo. But let's jump back to debt consolidation for a minute. I'm working with a client right now. His name is Ben. He's going to refinance his house, pay off a host of credit cards, and 2 truck payments. And yes, his mortgage interest rate is going to go up, but his monthly expenses are going to go down significantly. And that monthly savings is going to get he and his family back on track. Guys, if you've got questions, check us out at mrmortgageradio.com. That's mrmortgageradio.com. My name is Mark Eitel, NMLS 1929005. I host the Mr. Mortgage Show, and we are always here and happy to help. Check us out at mrmortgageradio.com.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is Mark Eitel, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show. And guys, we do this each week right here, same time, same station. We do it for you. If you've got questions, give us a call, 855-462-7292. That's 855-462-7292. We do it for me too, because I have a lot of fun doing this show for you each week. I really enjoy it. So if we can help, we are always here and happy to help. 855-462-7292. That's how you get your questions on the air. And guys, that's how you get us during the rest of the week and actually through the weekend too and into next week. We are here and happy to help. If you prefer to shoot us an email, just visit mrmortgageradio.com. That's mrmortgageradio.com. And you'll find all our info there too. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, you can click that email icon and shoot your questions over that way. And I know we've got the 800 number and the national this and the national that, but we're still right here in your backyard and happy to help. So call us if you need us. But anyway, guys, let's keep your questions rolling. I'm going to throw it over to Jen and see if we can get another question on the air. Hey, Jen, what do we have?
Joshua sent us this. You mentioned a blended rate refinance formula or calculation when looking at an equity line. Can you explain what you meant? I looked through the podcast but couldn't find it. Thanks.
Hey, that's a great question. And I actually just mentioned that a second ago. So if you Google blended rate calculator, you might stumble across one. But basically what you're doing is you're looking at the first mortgage, right? Because you're talking about a refinance, a cash out refinance versus keeping a first mortgage in place and putting an equity line in place behind it. And equity lines are no longer cheap money. They were practically free during the pandemic because where rates were, but a lot of people are getting rate quotes in the low double digits with equity lines because oftentimes it's prime plus, depending on your credit score, 1 point, 2 points, 2.5 points. Well, prime's at 8%. So if you're one of those people getting quoted prime plus 2, you're at 10. Could be 10.5 if you're at one of those people that are getting quoted prime plus 2.5. And, you know, there are banks out there that have an introductory rate prime minus a point. Well, then you're at 7. So not free money anymore. But my reference to a blended rate calculation is take your first mortgage and look at the interest rate and how much it's costing you, because you do have to factor in where you are in the amortization schedule. Have you had that first mortgage for 5 years, for 3 years? Look at the remaining balance and the amount of interest that you're going to pay on that mortgage, and then look at the equity line component and the amount of interest, and then blend those two rates together over the length of time that you're going to carry that debt. And it gets complicated, but we can help you with it. That way, you know, if I have an equity line at, let's just say for argument's sake, somebody referenced before the break, we were talking about an 80-15, right? You're getting a first mortgage of 80% and a second mortgage at 15%. Well, that second mortgage is going to carry a higher interest rate and typically a shorter term. So you would take the cost of that money, that 15%, and the cost of the money on the 80%, and there's a calculation to blend those two together. So if you're at 6% on or 6.5% on your first, or let's say 6% for round numbers, and 9% on your second, what's the real cost of that money? Is it 7? Is it 6.875? Is it 7.75? That's how you blend the rates to do the calculation, the actual cost of all of the money. And then you can say, okay, is a cash out refinance a better option at, 6.5% versus a blended rate to take that equity line? So I hope that helps. It's not an easy calculation just to say, hey, X times Y minus this equals that. There's more to it. You have to factor in the remainder of the loan that you currently have with the expected term of the equity line. But that's what I'm talking about. If you Google blended rate calculator, you might find something that helps. Or give us a shout. I'll try to find one for you. I can shoot you over. I might have one in an Excel sheet format that I can just email over to you, and you can go out there and shop for the most competitive equity line. And don't let every bank pull your credit. Just call them and ask them, hey, what are your equity line terms? Because they vary wildly from bank to bank, but they're all based on prime. It's either going to start with prime minus with an introductory rate, and then it'll adjust typically to prime plus some of the higher credit scores and lower combined loan to values, because that's also a factor, right? If you have a 50% loan on a first mortgage, right? 50% of the value is the balance on the first mortgage. Then you can get typically up to 30% of the value in the form of an equity line. So you're going to want to sort all of that out. But man, brilliant question. Thank you for paying attention. And if you need help, we can help you. Sometimes the equity line is the way to go. Sometimes the cash out refi is the better choice if you do that blended calculation. But I appreciate that question. Hey, Jen, do we have another one?
Ronaldo has this question. Is it possible to get a first-time buyer mortgage on a mobile home? It's a fairly new double wide, if that matters. Thanks.
Hey, Ronaldo, that is a brilliant question, my man. And a lot of people have that very same question. And man, mobile home prices are surprising. And I prefer the term manufactured home, because when I think of mobile home, I think of the trailer parks of the 70s, which nothing wrong with that. But some of the double wides and triple wides now are amazing. There's a mobile home dealership out in Okeechobee, and we ride the motorcycles out there often. And I stopped in there a year or so ago thinking about maybe looking at one for a second home situation. And man, I was duly impressed with how nice that was. And we didn't end up doing it, but I'm glad we stopped, because I have a whole new appreciation for that. And guys, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but there are neighborhoods that are trading in the 300,000s for double wide manufactured homes. So not anything to turn your nose up at price point wise anymore. But here are the rules, Ronaldo. For a regular mortgage on a manufactured home, yes, you can absolutely do it. And there is an age requirement. The home has to be newer than, I say 1977. Guys, you've heard me say this before. Technically, it's the summer of, I think it's July to be exact, of 1976. But nobody knows the actual month off the top of their heads that the home was manufactured in. So to be comfortable, I like to say 1977 or newer, and you must own the land as part of the transaction, and it needs to be deeded as real property. So if you're looking at a manufactured home and there's a registration sticker like you would see on a boat or a camper in the window, then oftentimes that's what's considered a mobile home park, and you're actually renting the dirt, but you own the structure. That's not deeded as real property, and you can't get a quote-unquote normal mortgage. There are financing options in that instance, but it's not a mortgage. So you want to make sure that you own the dirt. The other thing we see a lot of are co-ops, and they have their own set of challenges, also doable, but their own set of challenges. So if it's a property where you own the lot that the home is on, and it's deeded as real property, and there's not a registration sticker in the window, there's actually a process. There's a document that's filed when the very first owner has that home installed on the property, and it now is deeded as one piece of real property and recorded as such. That document makes it financeable from the standpoint of a normal mortgage. So I got a little long-winded with that one, but it's doable, absolutely doable. We do it a lot, and in our area, we're seeing the prices of those mobile homes have jumped up quite a bit. So a lot of people are looking at those as options where in the past they might have looked for a condo or a townhouse, but now that mobile home, because of the pricing, is starting to become an attractive choice for a lot of first-time buyers. So, and as I mentioned, I'm impressed with some of them. And we've seen a single-wide manufactured house on 5 acres, and we've seen a double-wide on a city lot. So a lot of opportunities and options out there. But to answer your question, I don't know why I went off on that. I guess because we stopped out there a while back, and I saw for myself how nice they've become. But anyway, great question. I appreciate that. I hope that helps. If you need more information, you know we're always here and happy to help. Just reach out. I'll answer any questions you have if I can. But guys, you hear the music? You know what that means? That's my cue. We'll be back in a few. Sit tight on the other side of this break. We'll be back with more of the Mr. Mortgage Show. Raise your hand if you are freaked out by what's happening in the banking world. Well, no, put your hands back on the steering wheel. It's all starting to feel like a house of cards. And what about that $17 billion, yes, billion with a B, dollars worth of bondholder money that was lost in that Credit Suisse takeover? Right now, I'm hearing more and more people talk about a flight to safety, and they're looking at gold and silver and other precious metals, but also rental property. Yep, income-producing rental property is starting to become sexy again. Guys, we've got an amazing loan program called the Landlord Loan. It's an easy way to acquire rental property. If you've got good credit and the assets, we don't even look at your personal income. We look at the income produced by the property. Assuming that it supports the debt, boom, you're a landlord. Check us out at mrmortgageradio.com. That's mrmortgageradio.com. My name is Mark Eitel, NMLS 1929005, and my team and I are here and happy to help. Check us out at mrmortgageradio.com.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is Mark Eitel. This is the Mr. Mortgage Show. And guys, you heard the man. If you've got questions or comments, just call or text 855-462-7292. That's 855-462-7292. That is the Anytime hotline. And Jen is wool-manning that hotline. She'll get your questions on the air. Hey, if you prefer to send us an email, just visit mrmortgageradio.com. That's mrmortgageradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page. Click that email icon. You can type up an email, hit send, and she will get your questions on the air for you. But man, oh man, we've had some amazing questions this week. You guys are definitely bringing the heat, and I greatly appreciate it. I hope everybody's enjoyed it so far and gotten a lot out of the Q&A. But speaking of your questions, let's throw it over to Jen and see if we can get another one on the air. Hey, Jen, what do you have?
Gil is asking, is there a limit to how far I can buy down my rate? Does it make a difference if the seller or I pay for the buy down? Can we both pay towards a buy down? Thanks.
Hey, Gil, that is a brilliant question, my man. And kudos to you for using the buy down strategy, especially if you're using the seller's money, because that's a big win right now in the market that we're seeing today. So anyway, to answer your question, technically not a limit, but here's where that technically part comes in, right? Because you are limited to, or we are limited, lenders are limited in how much they can charge a borrower for a loan. And there's a percentage of the overall fees can't exceed a certain percentage of the loan. And origination points, discount points are part of that. Now, you did mention the seller paying for part or all. In that instance, that takes some of the burden of the fees off of your side of the equation. So you and the seller paying together could essentially accomplish a larger buy down. But to answer your question, technically, it's not how far you buy the rate down where you're going to run into a bit of resistance. It's going to be how much it costs to buy the rate down as a proportion of the total loan amount. But if you've got a specific scenario that you want to run by me, I'm happy to have a conversation with you. I'd need to know the loan amount and the desired interest rate, and then how much you and the seller have in mind for buying the rate down with what that amount of money is, to see if that's something that's achievable. But brilliant question. I know not a clear answer, but brilliant question. I guess the clear answer is call or email me off the air and I'll walk you through it, and we'll see exactly how far you can go before you break that threshold. But using the seller's money does take some of the math off of your side of the equation. So you might get where you want to be with it by going that route. But brilliant question. I appreciate it. Hey, Jen, do you have another one ready?
Nellie has this question for us today. Is it difficult to refinance a home that is in a family trust? I set it up for my kids, but I want to refinance, pay off the existing mortgage, and do some renovations.
Hey, Nellie, short answer is you should be fine if you're in a revocable trust, which most of the family trusts are. The trust documents will have to be reviewed to make sure there's not an issue, but we do it all the time. So, yeah, you should be okay with what I know so far based on your question. And if you'd like a more concise answer, just give us a call off the air, and I'll be happy to look at those trust docs for you. But you should be fine. We see it done all the time. We do it all the time. And yeah, appreciate that question. Hope that helps. Hey, Jen, let's get another one in.
Armando called this one in. Last week you were talking about a 100% loan for first-time buyers. Can you explain how this works? Thanks. Great show.
Thanks for that. That's a great question. Basically, the loan that we were talking about was the FHA loan, which is 96.5% loan, and then a 3.5% grant to get to 100% financing. And the cool thing about that particular, now they all vary a little bit, but the particular loan product that we were talking about, that is a forgivable grant. So it's almost like a gift, if you will. But that's how it works. It's a 96.5% first with a 3.5% grant. You still have closing costs. The seller can pay up to 6% of the purchase price towards the closing costs with that exact loan program. So you can essentially get in for very little, if no money out of pocket, if all the math lines up. So I welcome the opportunity to talk with you more about it, but I appreciate that question. That is a great one. And it's a great loan program for people who just don't have the upfront money to get into a property. So anyway, Jen, do you have okay, what do we have?
Aaron sent this one. I've been listening to your podcast and heard about the REC refinance. If we do this, can we take out some cash for remodeling the kitchen?
Hey, that's a great question. And first, let me say thanks for checking out the podcast. I'm always excited when we get people who shoot us emails or, messages saying, hey, I listened to the podcast. Guys, if you're curious and you want to listen, there are a lot of episodes up there. We've been doing the show for quite some time. But go to mrmortgageradio.com and click on that radio show podcast link, and it'll take you to the podcast page. And then you can listen until your heart's content. Did I forget the question? No, I remember the question. I almost forgot the question. REC refi. So REC stands for REC, REC, reduce, eliminate, and consolidate. So to answer your question, that REC refi is designed to consolidate some debt and lower your monthly payment. But yes, to answer your question, you can pull some cash out to remodel. But keep in mind, you want to stay at 80% of the value of your property or less with the new loan amount. But we're seeing more and more people every day who are locked into their home because of the interest rate, right? They're not selling and going anywhere. So they're using either an equity line strategy or, in this case, a cash out refinance. And you can do it as part of the REC program to pull some cash out to do some renovations because you're staying put and you're utilizing the equity to make the house what you want. And we're seeing it a lot, guys. I had a conversation with somebody the other day who really wanted an extra bedroom and a pool, and they decided that they were going to do a cash out refinance and put a pool in and close the patio in and make it a home office. So not alone in that strategy, but brilliant, brilliant question. And I hope that answer helped. And yeah, as I mentioned, we are seeing more and more people capitalize on the equity position that they find themselves in and the inability, if you will, or the lack of desire, rather, I guess is a better way to say it, to move and incur all of those costs, a higher interest rate, a higher sales price, a higher tax base, when they have almost what they want now, and they're just pulling some of that equity out and making that home the sweet home that it could be. So anyway, Jen, can we get one more question in? Okay, go.
Beth sent this email. Is that 100% loan you talked about available in Virginia? How do I get more information?
Hey, thank you for that. Yes, it is available in Virginia. Actually, I believe it's available everywhere we are, which is everywhere but New York. And as I mentioned, there are a few varieties of that loan program. So that 100% program, I believe, is nationwide, and we have utilized it in Virginia as well as many, many other places. And hey, guys, in addition to that, there's a new conventional loan program that just rolled out with a 1% down payment requirement. So A lot of people are challenged not necessarily by making the monthly payment. They're already paying a high rent payment. We're seeing credit scores not always the issue. The down payment is a lot of times the hurdle, if you will, that people are bumping up against. And some of these more creative programs, these grant programs or this 99% loan can be the workaround. So I appreciate that question. But to answer it, yes, absolutely available in Virginia. Second part of your question, just reach out to us. 855-462-7292. You can call that number anytime. As I mentioned, when we're not on the air, that pushes over to the office. We'll jump on a call with you and walk you through it. Or check out mrmortgageradio.com, and there's a link there that says new applicants start here. If you click on that, you can go right to the loan application. But I encourage you to call us first. I'd love to have a conversation with you and see if there's anything that we can do to walk you through it, get you comfortable with it. We can do estimated closing costs and payments and all of that stuff for you. So brilliant question. I certainly appreciate it. Uh-oh, guys, you hear the music? You know what that means? We have wrapped up another week of the Mr. Mortgage Show. Time certainly flies when I'm sitting behind the mic. I enjoy spending some time with you each week. Thank you for being here. If you need us during the week, 855-462-7292 is the anytime hotline. And easier than that is mrmortgageradio.com. That's mrmortgageradio.com. Guys, have an amazing week. We'll see you back next week right here. Same bat time, same bat station.
That's a wrap. Join Mark Eitel next week for more thrilling, edge-of-your-seat discussions about real estate and mortgages right here on The Mr. Mortgage Show.